Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome here to the Morgan Podcasting Network's live stream on Facebook or YouTube. Perhaps you're catching up to the video later on YouTube. Perhaps you're old school and you still just listen to the podcast the way that this started. I am Rod Morgan. I will serve as affable host here this evening on the sports podcast. We call it Balls and Brew, the executive producer of this and every other podcast that we do here on the network. And you're going to get a taste of a couple of different ones this evening. Is my guy. I've known him since elementary school. It's James Thomas Jamriska. Jimmy Jam, hello.
I am excited to be a football fan, Rod.
You definitely should be. This is a big time week 11. We're going to get to it very soon, but let's introduce the rest of the crew. Our guy, the old man, he's back after a week off. Chris, tell everybody why you couldn't join us last week.
I can't really speak to the truth of the matter, Rod, but let's just say people are safer.
There we go. I like that. That's what we like to hear. The man who's going to make us smarter about an absolutely huge week 11 in the NFL is our handicapper, Josh Williams. Josh, hello.
What's up, boys? What's going on?
It's a big time week 11. Mr. Williams, I would contend, and I'd like to contend things like this, that there's no possible way of checking, that this is the biggest week of NFL games the NFL has ever had. I would venture to say there has never been another week where there have been more games between teams that have good records and people are excited for. That's ridiculous. Of course, there probably have been, but there are three great games this week. And of course, Mr. Williams, as I look down at the games that you have chosen to pick for us, you did not pick either of the two big games. Now, in one of your defense, the Thursday night game is actually a good game. We cannot pick for the people. Philadelphia, Washington is going on right now as we speak. By the time anybody listens to this, it's not going to be any good. Or the folks who are watching it right now and watching us, shout out to you if you're doing that. You don't need us to talk to you about it. So that one's off the table. But Williams, nothing on Baltimore, Pittsburgh, nothing on KC, Buffalo. What's the problem here?
My bonus pick is KC Buffalo if we get to it. So that's the fourth game.
Oh, listen, don't tease me like that then. I'll make you just give me a straight up pick for Las Vegas at Miami. Why does anybody want to hear about that?
Yeah. I mean, not that many people. You have to bet on that game too if you want to watch it.
Listen, you're going to get great stuff for us on that game. We'll get there, but I like that. Jimmy, do you like the challenge that Williams has laid down for us here? If we get through a couple of these games where Williams is going to give us the knowledge, the good bets that you should be making to win you money, we can actually get to the big time, the big boy stuff.
There's no way we're going to get there, so I'm not worried about it at all.
Look at you, Jimmy, being a realist. Chris, come on. You accept the challenge with me that we're going to get through these games so we can talk the big boy games.
Let's get it done, Rod.
All right. We must address the Colts and the Bears because that's what we do. And here's what we're going to do for the Bears. We're going to do the Bears a huge favor. All right. We've all talked a lot about the Bears and we'll continue to talk about the Bears. But this week, we're going to give them a break. And Chris, you weren't here last week. I went crazy on the Colts. I know you agree with me on this. There's no reason we need to talk about this because we've been proven right now that Anthony Richardson's back in at quarterback, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, discussion's over.
Bingo.
Let's move forward.
There we go. So those two things are out of the way. Williams, let's move on to. I'll let you talk about one game that I like and that I know you're gonna like to get you warmed up, get the juices flowing, and then maybe we'll try to blow through the other games a little quicker. Let's start with Seahawks v Niners, which is a really good game and could have been a better game, but the Seahawks have been on a slide recently. The Niners are looking hot. Williams, what do you got for us?
Yeah, one of the games we lost last week was the Niners did not cover because their kicker missed not one, not two, but 3 field goals. So a little disappointed with the Niners there. I am going to take the Seahawks plus 6.5 going against my guy, Shanahan. You can find that minus 108 on FanDuel. The net rest disadvantage, Rod, for the Niners here. Seattle coming off a bye. They just activated Gabe Lucas at right tackle. They get DK Metcalf back. And last time they played San Francisco, they were in a horrendous spot, off short rest and with 3 defensive starters out. Also, a new coaching staff on short rest. That's pretty tough to prepare for, San Francisco. And going on the road off the bye after back-to-back home losses, it's only happened 18 times in the wildcard era. Those teams are 12-5-1 against the spread for those teams. That's a positive. in the Seahawks corner here. And Bosa's banged up with a hip. He's not going to be 100%. Kittle has some tight hamstrings. Sounds like he's going to be less than 100%. Travarius Ward at corner for the Niners. He's out. Seattle, like I said, getting DK back. And you could say, well, he didn't do anything in that first meeting last month. Remember, DK had a 70-yard touchdown called back in that game by a ticky-tack illegal formation call. This feels like a kitchen sink game for Seattle. They have to get this game. I feel like they're going to have a really good defensive performance here. Plus 6.5 is too much here. Give me Seattle on Sunday.
Nice. I like that. One of my favorite things to do is when you start to see numbers like you were giving to us there, right? And those numbers lean towards one of your preseason leans, right? Where you can kind of then match up, hey, coming into the year, I liked this team, and now I'm getting some positive value on this team. And that's what you and I have talked about in the past with Seattle. I thought that was going to pay off for us a couple of weeks ago. Seattle didn't really do as well for us there as I was hoping. So let's go. I still believe this can be a good football team. I believe Geno Smith is just as good as quarterback as many other guys in the league this year, especially in a year where quarterback play is down. So this is going to be a fun game. Chris, what do you think about the West Coast battle?
Seattle's becoming an enigma. Here's a team that is better on the road right now than they are at home, but they are horrible against their own division and the NFC in general. So, I think there's if I was a Seattle Seahawks fan, I'd be very, very, very nervous, but I'm also not scared of San Francisco right now either, Rod. I'm not scared of them. They don't frighten me like they used to.
Like they used to? So you're talking like how far back are we going back? Are we talking like Dwight Clark? Are we talking Jerry Rice? Are we talking Ricky Waters? Like which are, you know what I mean? Like Jeff Garcia? Like which San Francisco team are we talking about here that terrifies you the most?
We got to go back to 1981 and the catch. All right, that's where it starts, Rod.
Jimmy, you knew that he was going back to 81 when I told him which Niners team he was going to go to. You knew he was going to 81, didn't you, Jimmy?
And by that, Rod, I mean, I thought he was going to go back to the actual 49ers in 1849. So didn't go quite as far back as I thought he would. So he went into little older days. But the 49ers, it's that kind of a weird season for them. Everyone seems to be hurt. Now some people are getting back, but not everybody. They still got Brock Purdy, and Brock Purdy is money.
Brock Purdy is money. I like that. Let's move on to a game that, like, I guess I'm sort of excited because I love my guy Jameis, and Jameis, I'm always going to be cheering for you. So let's go to Browns at New Orleans. But like, New Orleans had the new coach bounce last week, so I see nothing exciting about the New Orleans Saints. Williams, maybe you got something different for us.
Yeah, we were against Jameis a few weeks ago against the Chargers. Now we're back on Jameis. Give me Cleveland plus 1.5, minus 122 on FanDuel.
Crab legs all around, baby. Let's go. The Knowles just
Make
got
sure you
smoked in South Bend. Jameis is going to lift up Florida State country. Let's go.
Make sure you grab it there because it's 2.5 points different on multiple other books where the Browns are actually favored by -1. So grab plus 1.5 on FanDuel there. Saints were a net negative of 16% down to down last week versus Atlanta. They were also a net negative and down to down EPA per play. The Falcons gained over 500 yards of offense on the Saints team last week. The Falcons also missed 3 field goals in that game. This number would be different if Mr. Youngwoo Koo knocks down just one of those kicks. And I really don't envision the Derek Carr going deep down the field to MVS as being something that you can bank on from week to week. Doesn't strike me as the most sustainable thing in the world. Also, you've got Myles Garrett going up against a rookie tackle here. Browns coming off the bye. They have 0 players on the injury report. Getting back some key pieces on the O-line. The Saints D ranks 30th in rushing success rate allowed. This could be a breakout game for Nick Chubb. And then the biggest part of this handicap, Rod, Jameis. Revenge game back in New Orleans.
Oh, yeah.
His Browns teammates will want to get him the W. I'm sure Jameis will have a ridiculous pregame speech beforehand. There will be one way to put it.
You know what? I bet Jameis really wanted to stick it to Dennis Allen, and now Dennis Allen's not across that sideline. So
Also, the Saints will be without their top two corners. They traded Marshawn Lattimore away, and Paulson Adebo had that brutal leg injury on the Thursday night game versus Denver. So the Browns should be able to move the ball on the ground and through the air here. And then ref stats, Alex Kemp calling this game. Home teams are under 500 against the spread in his career. So yeah, give me Cleveland plus 1.5. I think we'll get a bounce back from the Browns here off the bye.
Jimmy Jam, I'm going to come to you first here with this. Did Williams just go Seinfeld on us? Did he just go the Derek Carr? Did he just give him the Derek Carr, kind of like he's the Drake? Is that what just happened right there?
I think that's what just happened right there. But another question I have, though, this one for Chris. Chris, isn't it about time for these teams to look and say, hey, do we really want to win this game? We should probably lose this game because, I mean, the Browns right now have 2 wins. That's like a top 4 pick. If you go to 4 wins and you're the Saints, that's like pick 8, 9, 10. I think really both teams should try to lose this game, Chris. I know you're really in for that, right?
I mean,
What
this
Jimmy
is
just did right there. That's incredible.
This is really a game of ineptitude, Jimmy. So I don't think tanking is going to come into play here. You have one of the league's worst offenses from Cleveland and one of the league's worst defenses in New Orleans. So it's which team fails less will get the win here. Unfortunately, either one of these teams are going to be successful this year, trying their best and trying not to tank. So that's unfortunately, but they should not be tanking, Jim.
There we go. All right.
I was going to say, it took you long enough to get there. Of course they should be tanking. The Browns are absolutely going nowhere. They have nothing to strive for at all. And the Saints have no identity whatsoever. They need to get a quarterback. Both of them. They need to be up at the top.
The Browns, here's the thing. The Browns have the best way to tank, right? Like, it'll be exciting as all get out, right? Jameis, it'll be all exciting as all get out. And then I'll just throw that back-breaking third pick sometime in the fourth quarter. And that's just all it takes. You know what I mean? But it was fun as heck to get there. You know, he's throwing 35 times. You know what I mean? He's got 280 yards. Like, you know, hey, that's a good day at the ballpark.
Because he doesn't know
Sean Watson.
He doesn't know the playbook, so he's just out there drawing plays in the mud, Rod.
He's drawing plays with crab legs, baby. He's out there drawing plays with crab legs. He's got those tucked down into his pants at all times. That's how Jameis rolls. Jameis, listen, I'm sorry. I really got to stop making crab leg jokes. I like Jameis, and I just making those for years. I'm like Jay Leno at this point. Just terrible material. He hasn't worked a night in years. Man, I'm old. Let's move on. Williams, let's go quickly. The keys that you focused on the most in this game so we can talk a little bit about the 2 big matchups.
Raiders and Fins. Is that where we're going here?
Yeah, this is your last pick. This is the only one you got left.
I'm going shocker under 44.5 in this game.
The whole game.
Miami's
That's the shocker. You picked the whole game total. Hell, we go.
Whole game.
Oh.
Yes.
He's growing up.
You can find that minus 118 on FanDuel. Miami's coming off a short week on the road on Monday Night Football where their D looked the best of the year. And new offensive coordinator Scott Turner for the Raiders. If you're the new OC of the Raiders, what does that mean? That means you're probably on the same page with the boomer ball that Antonio Pierce wants to play. Run the football, run the ball some more, and then if that doesn't work, run the ball some more. This could be even more evident this week as the Raiders are coming off a bye. So the Raiders D, what they actually do a good job of, and really this is how they beat the Chiefs last year on Christmas, they limit explosive plays. When you play the Dolphins, that's exactly what you want to do. You want to limit the big plays from Tyreek, Waddle, Achane, and company. And Miami this year has thrown more short passes to get the ball out quick to obviously help Tua in limiting the hits that he takes. A lot of short, high percentage throws for Miami, a lot of runs and a cloud of dust from the Raiders. This clock should tick, tick, tick throughout. Also, humidity in the forecast for Miami, shocker, I know. Raiders could play at an even slower tempo in the fourth quarter. Gas from that heat. Give me the under 44.5 on this game.
All right, I'm with you that I believe the Raiders are terrible. I'm with you that I don't believe the Dolphins are incredibly good. But there's a lot of the same pieces on this team, Chris, that put up like 60 or something like that versus the Broncos the other year? Like, do you worry that like we could see one of those games where the crazy mad genius Mike McDaniel dials up a couple of those run plays that go for 65 yards? And Williams is right that clock's going to tick off. But if they got 3 65-yard running plays, they might be putting up points that are going to push this over.
Yeah, so there is a universe out there, Rod, where Miami is still scoring touchdowns on Denver in that game.
Right.
But yeah, there's still a lot of weapons on that offense for Miami, and yeah, maybe it may be short passes, but that's all those guys need is the ball and a little bit of daylight, and they can turn that 3-yard screen into a 70-yard touchdown at any given moment.
That's definitely the worry. But that being said, Jimmy, this is my put the mortgage on it right here, right? This is my put the mortgage on it bet, right? Like I don't see a lot of scenarios where you have a lot of points scored by the Raiders, right? I just think that we're a disaster here. I think this is a sinking ship. I think no matter what kind of new coordinator bounce you want to get, what kind of nepotism you want to tell me about with Norv Turner as his dad, you still have Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew as the man dialing up the numbers. So, Jimmy, I love the under here. What do you think?
Even a 30-13 shellacking gets the under. So, and I think that's where the Raiders are going to be in that 13-17 range. And the Dolphins, I don't think can get to 30. They haven't been. As a Tyreek Hill fantasy owner, I know that for sure.
They're averaging 16 points a game is what Miami's averaging. The Raiders averaging 18.
So you got to take that 16 with a little grain of salt because the Tua situation, but also they haven't scored that much when he's come back. So Chris, that's a very valid point there. Even with Tua, they're not going to get that high. It's definitely then going to go the over.
So that's an ugly game. We got through the smart plays. Williams gave you the numbers that he's crunching. Those are the plays that he recommends you make. If you're going to make plays off of his recommendations, those are the one he's recommending. Basically, what I'm saying here is don't come back to us about these next two games that we're going to touch on, but these are the big boys. All right. Williams, I know, has a few things on Buffalo and KC, so we'll close with that. We'll just hit Baltimore, Pittsburgh quickly here. I mean, Jimmy, do you have that feeling that like Mike Tomlin has the right fairy dust and we're seeing Pittsburgh finally beat Baltimore here? Do you have that feeling, or are you going a different way?
I can't wait to hear what Williams says about Russell Wilson because I have been correct about Russell Wilson this entire season. Seeing him actually throw the ball where he wants to and scoring touchdowns has been kind of neat. But I just think it's too much Derrick Henry. It's too many weapons. Lamar's going to be there. I think the Ravens are going to win this one.
Chris, where are you at on this big game, Ravens Steelers? You used to live in Pittsburgh, as we mention all the time whenever they come up.
Yes, and I'm also a huge Lamar Jackson fan. I have been since he's gotten into the league. I want nothing more than to watch the Ravens just completely destroy Pittsburgh to the point where they break their soul and Pittsburgh can't win another game for the entire season and they fall apart. Tomlin loses his winning season streak. That's what I want, Rod.
See, I want the Steelers to win because Tomlin's feeling himself a little bit, right? Like when you're a guy like Tomlin who's got the job security that he has, and then you have that you're putting it in everybody's face the way that he is this year, like he's feeling himself with some of his quotes this year. So, he's talking about he didn't see Johnson on film. He's talking about the guys on the sidelines. I guess we'll never know, with the wry smile. He's wearing the Ray-Bans everywhere. Like I want to see the Steelers finally win this game just for Mike Tomlin's walk off the field interview. All right. I'm ready for it. I want it. Let's get it. Williams, what do you think about that game? I know you didn't do any work on it, but what do you think about that game at a quick glance?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. The Ravens are dead last versus number one wide receivers, and Russ loves to throw it deep to George Pickens. And I love George Pickens coming out of college. It has kind of taken him a little bit to get on track here, but you could argue that he hasn't had the best quarterback play, and Russ has kind of brought it out for him. So I will say this: I lean towards the Ravens here, but what kept me off this game is Harbaugh is 0-10 against the spread in his career against the Steelers when favored by 3 or more. That's pretty crazy. These teams usually play a pretty low scoring game, but the Ravens offense is, I feel like, probably the best that this Mike Tomlin defense has ever seen. So you include Derrick Henry in there. So there's a lot of variables. So the game is in Pittsburgh. Yeah, I would lean Baltimore here.
So we got Romo and Nance on the call for Pittsburgh v. Buffalo. Who's calling the Baltimore Pittsburgh game? Is that going to be on Fox? Who's getting that one?
That's CBS.
Well, see, they can go back and forth actually now, Chris. Like I'm with you. I'm still old school where I think it's one's AFC, one's NFC, but like the
No,
new
I'm
DVD
looking
one-
at the game
Oh, is it?
details. Watch on CBS.
Oh,
Let's
wow.
go. Good job, Chris.
Wow. All right. So maybe certain markets aren't going to be able to get. That's a bummer then that they're not splitting those games up a little bit because the Sunday night game's not bad either. Actually, Cincinnati and Los Angeles Chargers. I just did Los Angeles Chargers. I don't know how many times I've not called them Los Angeles. Look at me.
Yeah,
Let's
weird.
go. Let's go. All right, Williams. Tell us a little bit about KC Buffalo, and then we'll all make predictions on that one on the way out here.
Yeah, I mean, I want this one included on the tally, Rod. I'm confident
So you're
with
in.
this.
Okay, here we go. You heard it from the man himself. I didn't even bully him into it. You heard it from the man himself.
I know I've been terrible this year, but let's go. I am going to take the Kansas City Chiefs plus 2.5, minus 115 on FanDuel. The Bills want to run more here. The problem is the Chiefs are top 3 on early down success rate versus the rush. Spencer Brown dealing with an ankle injury for Buffalo offensive tackle. Keon Coleman already listed as out at wide receiver. Dalton Kincaid looking extremely iffy for the game. Amari Cooper might not go with a cast around his wrist. If you have Brown on the O-line miss, that's a lot of pieces down on this Bills team. Let's face it, the Bills are already thinner than most would think roster-wise. We've just seen Josh Allen be Superman and put this team on his back. The Chiefs are the much more balanced team with their personnel on defense and on offense, and they could get Juju back after DeAndre Hopkins had a nice game a few weeks back. So the wide receiver crew is looking a little bit more healthy for Kansas City. And on D, the Bills are allowing the 5th most drives to reach the red zone. More importantly, Mahomes is 12-1-1 against the spread as a dog in his career. That's 92%. And as a dog, his passer rating is 108.3, the best passer rating of any underdog since 1970. And that's out of 323 qualified quarterbacks. Mahomes loves to play with a chip on his shoulder. I think the public is tired of how lucky the Chiefs have been this year, and they're just throwing their hands up and saying, "Oh, this is it. This is the game where KC's going to lose." And I would ask, why? Why is this the game that KC's going to lose? Because I don't see it. You know what I don't see, Rod? I don't see Mahomes throwing a pick 6 in the first 3 minutes of the game like someone just did. You know what else I don't see, Jimmy? I don't see Mahomes throwing a second pick in the first 6 minutes of the game. You know what I really don't see, Chris? I really don't see Mahomes throwing a third pick in the fourth quarter on first down like someone just did. Flacco, wackety Flacco. Yeah. So don't overthink it here. We're getting Andy Reid, Spags, and Mahomes as dogs. This feels exactly like a few weeks ago when KC went out to San Fran as dogs, and there were a lot of sharps on the Niners. What happened? The Chiefs won by double digits. And if that wasn't enough, everyone is going to be pointing to how lucky the Chiefs have gotten with the refs. Let me tell you some ref stats, serious ref stats.
Wow.
Land Clark reffing this game. This game is in Buffalo. Home teams are only 28, 42, and 2 against the spread in Clark's career. That's an abysmal 40%. It gets better. The Chiefs are 4-0 all-time with Clark, including 3-0 on the road. KC goes into this game as dogs, similar to the divisional game at Buffalo in the playoffs last season. That game was reffed by Sean Hockley's crew. Land Clark's group has the closest resemblance to Hockley's crew in its officiating style. Give me the Kansas City Chiefs plus 2.5 this week. We're getting back on track.
I love that you just brought up Hockey League because I got to say to my guy there, calm down, bro. All right. Nobody wants to hear you flex and speak German. All right. For one of your calls there in the Germany game. So, like, just calm down. All right. I know you come from the Hockey League clan. Those of the let me pump my guns up and put it on the schmedium for everybody to see me when I walk out here and I call holding. All right. I get that you come from that family lineage, but you don't need to flex that hard and drop German for your call. All right. So calm down, Hockey League.
I mean, the crowd there was German. It's partially for them as well, maybe.
No, we're bringing them American football, Chris. All right. That's what we're bringing to them. American football. It's right there in the title. All right. We're bringing them Sweet Caroline. Okay. We are bringing them American football. All right. That's what we're doing. None of their sing-alongs, none of their soccer chant stuff. This is American football. I want my referee speaking American. All right. Perhaps you didn't see what happened on November 5th, Chris. All right. I want my referee speaking American. Okay. I'm sorry. I should listen. I shouldn't make jokes like that. Here's what I'm going to say about that football game. Buffalo beat Kansas City. Excited to hear Romo on the call. He loves great quarterback play. We're going to see great quarterback play, or are we? Josh Allen was sneaky, not incredibly great versus that Colts team last week. Couple questionable passes. Things maybe are still a little wild up there in Buffalo, right? It's basically, hey, Josh, throw on the cape for us and make something happen. So I love Williams going with the Chiefs here. And I refuse to believe that Dalton Kincaid out means anything to Buffalo, because Dalton Kincaid being in has meant absolutely nothing to my fantasy team. All right. Jimmy started us on that a little while ago. I got to get a shot in at Dalton Kincaid. James Thomas, what do you got on that one?
I'm kind of with you, Rod. I wasn't as impressed with the Bills' offense as you think we would have with that win against the Colts. And the Colts are not known for their stacked defense, should I say. The only way the Chiefs go undefeated this season is if they beat the Bills. So, of course, they're going to beat the Bills.
Chris, you seem a little like you're not buying everything that's being fed here. What do you got for us on this game?
Yeah, you know what, Williams, that I do know will happen during this game is Mahomes will throw an interception, because he's thrown one essentially every game this year. He's got 9 on the season, all right? So he's going to turn the ball over. I think there's just too much in Buffalo for Kansas City to handle. They've been way too close on way too many close games. If Williams would listen to his own type of whatever. If he would listen to himself from the past, he would know that this luck will run out. The scales of luck will balance, and all these close calls that Kansas City has had, this inch out of bounds with Baltimore, this barely a block kick versus Denver, the overtime loss in Tampa Bay, like this is going to run out, and it's going to run out in Buffalo.
Listen, you lost your train of thought there for a second. That's all right. None of us brought you back to it. But then you dropped a golden nugget like scales of luck. All right. I mean, that's why we just let you go. All right. You're the old man. You're always going to pull something out. Williams, I see you putting your finger up. You got your final retort before we close up the football shop here.
Yeah, I agree with Chris. That is the luck rankings, it's going to run out at some point. I'm just saying Mahomes is awesome as an underdog. He's got that chip on his shoulder, 12-1-1 against the spread as a dog. I don't think it happens this week.
That's a big time stat. I mean, that's a big time stat. Anytime you can quote a 92% stat and then you're giving me over double-digit games, I'm going to listen to that one. I like the Chiefs. Williams likes the Chiefs. Jimmy likes the Chiefs. Chris likes the Bills. He's the only contrarian. Shocking out of Chris. Do you want to hear him be contrarian a few more times? Stick around a little bit. We're going to talk some basketball. We're going to talk some professional wrestling.
Welcome to the Fast Break, the fastest 15 minutes in the NBA. Jimmy, Rod, and Chris are here. If you are watching on YouTube, Twitch, where else are we? Facebook, everywhere. The guy in the corner is Williams. He'll get out of here as soon as possible. He does have to make sure.
I think like if you have one of those old like smart TVs that like
Sure.
only have like 6 or 7 apps that you can actually access through just the internet, we're on there. I think we're right there. We got one of those channels. People can find us there.
With the amount of people that watch us, yes, I think that's exactly who can watch us for sure. We've got to talk about the reigning, defending champion of the Wins League. Jimmy is still in first place. Another nail biter between Jimmy and Rod. Chris has not had his fair luck in Wins Leagues this year. Chris King, you have 49 wins on the season. I have a question for you. Who are you more worried about right now? Your 3-win Pelicans or your 4-win Milwaukee Bucks?
I think I'm I'm more worried about the Bucks right now. Like, I'd be dumb. Like, the Pelicans, they weren't necessarily someone I was banking on. They could turn it around. Milwaukee has some sort of issue, whether it's the East has caught up and maybe surpassed them with the talent they can put on the floor night after night or something. Because it's whatever Milwaukee's doing, it's not working, right?
Yeah, that's an understatement right now, Chris. Milwaukee is not doing anything correct. Zion Williamson is hurt again. They might have, hung on to him a little long, Rod. But I know you definitely want to talk about those Bucks. And is there anything that they can do right now? Because they're not going to win the championship with the team they have.
I think what the Bucks have to do is we all have to get together in the locker room, right? And we need to come up with a schedule, right? And every 3 or 4 days, a new person's going to have to take off over to Germany. All right, we're gonna need some serious German, whatever the doctors do over there, whatever kind of injections, right? Your guy Christian McCaffrey, he surprisingly went over to Germany and now he's back playing for the 49ers. So, because the Bucks' problem is they're old. That's why I love that you went to the old man of this podcast to ask what was going on with the Bucks, because the Bucks' problem is that they're old. Giannis isn't old, but what we're starting to realize is he's older for the style of game that he plays, right? He still has that rough edge where there's no jumper, there's no real three-pointer. And so on certain nights when he's not ready to just absolutely knife to the basket every time, it's not working out as great for them. And then when Giannis is the only guy going to the basket, nobody else on that team gets hot. And so creaky bones don't get together, and that team just looks ugly many times. I don't know that it can be saved in New Orleans either, though, Jimmy, for a different reason. Like, I actually received a letter in the mail. The Pelicans were wondering if I could suit up for them. They have so many injuries going on down there. So I unfortunately couldn't, because I got a new thing I'm trying to get cooking up here. But a lot of guys hurt down there in New Orleans. If you can't put bodies on the floor, you ain't winning games.
I think eventually the New Orleans Pelicans want to be a team that can do something in the playoffs. I think that's kind of their goal. And as we saw last year, that might have happened, but Zion got hurt once again. And I can't remember where I heard it, but someone's like, "Why are these hamstrings so difficult? Go stretch beforehand. What are you doing?" And it is that torque, that movement that a 300-pound guy is not supposed to do. That's hurting them a lot. And the Bucks, again, there's just something that has to turn around, or they're going to have to start getting rid of people. Speaking of getting a little old, Rod, you're in second place with 61 wins on the season. My question for you, you've really only got one team that I think is underperforming to an extent, and that's the Philadelphia 76ers.
I know.
Talk to me about Joel Embiid and the game that he played a couple days ago.
You've got to be real worried if you're a Joel Embiid wins league owner like myself, and you got to doubly be worried if you're a Philadelphia 76ers fan, all right? Because you'd hope that if the reason he wasn't playing to start the season was to ramp up because conditioning was down, that he would have looked a little bit better than completely like Patrick Ewing in the playoffs, sweating, grabbing at his shorts after 3 minutes of playing in that game. Then he only played 17 minutes. I mean, like, we got to start worrying, Jimmy. Like, there's certain guys where it just falls off the table, right? Like, I just think we think that because LeBron is doing what LeBron's doing, hello, 2 straight triple doubles at 40 years old, right? And Kevin Durant looking really good for a little while, but he's all of a sudden nicked up, right? It's just like Father Time. Maybe certain guys can beat it, but we shouldn't expect that everybody beats it. And some guys just kind of like, they just fall off, right? Like they don't get to like walk off into the sunset. They just kind of fall off and they bang around for a couple of years, and they're just never really what you want them to be. And we could be entering that phase here. I'm worried.
So the good news is, Rod, we actually have Father Time on the podcast. Chris King is here. Chris, what are you going to do with Joel Embiid?
I mean, listen, there are plenty of ways people can keep up their conditioning when they are off on injury.
Nope.
It is not my responsibility to make sure that they do those types of activities, all right? So I am not in charge of Joel Embiid and his conditioning. I guarantee you, anytime LeBron James was injured or Kobe was injured or the GOAT Michael Jordan was injured, they were still training. They were still doing things to make them a better competitor, a better player, and a better overall athlete.
Shout out to Corey Nance, our number one fan watching in here. I'm sure he'll have a couple of nice takes for sure. Paul George, though, is back. He's playing a little bit. I think that's a good sign, right?
Jared McCain, the rookie, drafted at 15, getting some run, even if he, gets bumped out when these guys come back from injury. If Maxey comes back from injury and looks good and McCain can keep up his play and Embiid rounds in shape, like I don't think you give up in Philadelphia land yet, but you're really, really worried. I think your panic meter is high, but it's not give up time yet.
Kyle Lowry, 11 games played. I guess that's good.
No, it's really not.
Not at all. And then Jimmy, of course, has 65 wins on the season so far, 4 games ahead of Rod. We are getting close.
Your ability to get a team at the end of the draft that carries your team is just like it's amazing. You do it in every wins league.
I'm actually very good at what I do. I know that, Rod. Thank you.
Here we go.
I guess so. I mean, and this is not me being a jerk, but the Wizards are supposed to have 2 wins right now. That's kind of what they do. The Hornets should probably have 4 wins. Every team in the East is bad.
Yeah.
So I think we should maybe talk about the Mavericks a little bit. They have 5 wins on the season, lost a couple here. I'm not nervous about that. This is really young. Luka's in some of the better shape he's been at the beginning of a season. Chris, Mavericks. I know you're a huge Mavericks guy. Rod is our Kyrie Irving expert. Do you have any thoughts on the Mavericks? Is this troubling for you?
I mean, don't we see this from Dallas about every year? At some point in time, we start getting nervous. Is this going to fall apart? Is this going to be the end? And they go through a spell of middling basketball. We know the West has revamped a little bit, and it's a little bit tougher out there, but it's not surprising, and it's still early in the season for me to be worried about Dallas being a game under 500.
A team that we don't have to worry too much if they're going to be around 500. The San Antonio Spurs, Rod. Wemby finally got 50. How about that for the big man? It was there were some questions at the beginning of the season here about him.
Yeah, but there's a method to the madness, and shout out to Coach Pop. Sorry to see that he suffered a mild stroke there, and shout out to him. Hopefully he gets back on the sidelines at some point this season. The NBA is better when Coach Pop is around. But Jim, I like, we have the Rod Damnation segment around here, and I'm one to take shots at people when it is warranted. But I think that Wemby was catching a little too much guff, right? Like, if we are going to complain that there are too many 3-pointers in the NBA game, how are we then going to complain about a guy, Victor Wembanyama, who's still young, trying to figure it out, making sure the 3-pointer is part of his arsenal, right? Like, I just think that he's a guy that sees I'm going to get frozen out at times if I can't make people respect my outside shot. So I'm going to keep taking it. And if I keep taking it, maybe we're going to have games where I shoot damn near 50% and hit 8 of them and score 50 points, because at that point then, Jim, what are you going to do with the 7'4" freak who can move like he does?
Yeah, we got to remember he's still young, second year in the league, and I'm pretty sure anyone would pick him. It's okay. He'll be fine. I'm not too worried about that. I did want to shout him out for 50. Another team I want to shout is our Cleveland Cavaliers, my Cleveland Cavaliers, should I say, because you didn't pick them. Cavs are 13-0 right now. They do host the Bulls in the group stage of the NBA Cup. They had a 6-point win over the Bulls a few nights ago. Chris, I mean, we have the Bulls, the Hornets, the Celtics, the Pelicans, and the Raptors. Obviously, there's a team that stands out there. Are the Cavs going to continue the streak for another week, or the Celtics might stop that?
Here's the thing with Cleveland. It's a team effort. Like, you can talk about having superstars, whoever you may want to bring up in Cleveland, but this has been a really team effort. It's not just one guy night in, night out. It's any number of 4 different guys essentially that can really hurt you and make it almost impossible to defend as another NBA squad. Like, it's been pretty impressive what Cleveland has put together so far.
Rodney.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell me that, right? But a little bit of what I see in Cleveland is the Mike Budenholzer Hawks, right? And like, did anybody really get that scared of those guys? And they ran roughshod through a couple of different regular seasons, right? Hell, we even had 1 month where we gave 4 of their guys player of the month together, right? It was the first time ever in NBA history that they did that, where they tried to shout out all 4 of the guys that were playing well there. And I think Chris is getting at that a little bit there by saying there's no real superstar in Cleveland. And like, sure, I think it's going to work, right? It's going to continue to work during this regular season. I mean, the NBA season is long, but they've already gotten out to such a great start that like they can afford a skid or two even later at this point, and then they'll still probably end up a top 4 seed in the East with the way things have already shaken out. So things are going to be good in Cleveland, but I like where Chris's head is at there because Evan Mobley, Garland, Jared Allen. I'm a little shaky on what those guys are going to do when the lights are bright. We know what Donovan Mitchell is going to do, but he's never been quite enough to pull a team over the hump. So shout out Cleveland. I wanted them bad in the wins draft because I thought they were going to do exactly this. I didn't think they'd be this type of monster, but I thought they were going to put up a bunch of regular season wins.
Speaking of monsters, I hear that music. It is time for the Rob Nation of the week.
My Rod Nation is for the rest of the league, quite frankly, not named the Boston Celtics. And I'll tell you why, okay? We lost the in-season tournament game on purpose, okay? Our coach, Joe Mazzulla, is sly like a fox, all right? He, under no circumstances, wanted a team that played all the way to the NBA championship last year to then play 2 extra games this year in Vegas as part of the NBA Cup, all right? We need to keep our rotations tight. And so Joe Maz said, hey, guys, all right, let's not win this game versus the Hawks. Let's get the NBA Cup out of the way early. We're not going to be down there to play 2 games extra that don't count in the standings. We don't need to do it. And the other reason that it is over for the rest of the league already, Jimmy, is we've spoken about three-point shooting a little bit already on this podcast, okay? But the Boston Celtics are attempting 181 more three-pointers than they are allowing their opponents, okay? That's huge in and of itself. But the second place team in that stat is the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they are at 91. So the Celtics are doubling up even the second place team on three-pointers attempted in a game that is now all about the math. I just think there's nothing you can do with this Boston team, and barring injuries out of their top 2 guys, Jimmy, Boston's going right back to the finals again. My Rod Nation is for the season being over already.
Chris King, is there a more congratulating, selfish Rod Nation that you've ever heard?
No, but I'm torn though, Jim,
with him?
because I'm a fan, Jimmy, and it's obvious that Rod is being the fan, all right, giving an excuse for why they lost. And for those listening, I put that in air quotes. They lost that game on purpose. Like, that's a true fan defending his team's honor. So I have to commend him for being a real fan, because we know how I feel about Rod and his fandom with other teams and sports and certain things. So, like, I have to commend him for that. But it's also utter BS otherwise, because Boston has not won anything yet. They couldn't win the NBA in-season tournament last year, and they didn't want to feel like they got humiliated, so they're coming out and sending people like Rod out to pass off this excuse as fact.
They haven't won anything yet except for the NBA championship last year, but other than that, they haven't.
Why are you bringing up the past, though?
It's the current. They're the current champions. It's not
That,
past. It's
they didn't win it
you know
this
what,
year.
Chris? You're lucky that it's time for the Kings Hardwood Hierarchy.
Well, we're just going to start right here, because the King is not Boston. It is Cleveland. All right. You can't.
That's fair. That's fair.
You can't be undefeated this deep into the season and not be the King. You got a 3-game lead on Boston. All right. And I'm sorry, but Boston, you lost that in-season tournament game. The NBA wants you to make that important to help the league move forward. And if Boston's not willing to do that, you're going to take a back seat and to Oklahoma City as the Queen, Boston the Prince.
Okay, and then, I mean, all that makes sense. Chet got hurt, so that's not good for OKC right now.
I want to shout out Chet on that, quite frankly, because the guy got hurt playing hard defense, right?
Yeah.
And like we just hear so often that doesn't happen. So like, shout out to that
why
dude
it doesn't
for going
happen.
up. Yeah, well, exactly, I guess. But shout out to that dude for going up and contesting the shot, playing hard. You know what I mean? Because like that's what Oklahoma City needs, right? They're gonna need guys that can step up and make the gritty plays. Because quite frankly, They got outgritted last year in the playoffs and went out with a bit of a whimper. So they're going to need that grit this year. So I was kind of enthused by that play. You don't want to see Chet get hurt, but I was enthused by it. Like, okay, go ahead, Chet. You got more of an edge than I thought you'd have.
Yeah, you want that effort without the result that they ended up having.
The top of the NBA is pretty good right now. We've got the Cavs at the King, the Queen, OKC, Celtics, Prince. The Suns got dethroned, if you will, from that Queen from last week, but they still have 9 wins. However, everyone stays for the Jester of the week.
Okay, well, you're going to have to travel for this one because it's north of the border. It's a new America. I don't know how easy that's going to be anymore, but you're going to have to go to Toronto to visit the Jesters now.
Okay.
That's a very good point. It might not be as easy to travel to see our neighbors in the north here soon, Chris. You could be onto something there.
That is actually really funny. Good job, Chris. Way to go, man. I didn't think you had that in you.
The Raptors, here's the thing, Chris, you want to talk about tanking. Honestly, let me ask you, do you think the Raptors are tanking or do you just think they're just not any good? Like, honestly, you could tell me either one for the Raptors and I'd believe it.
Oh, they're not good, Rod. Okay, they just aren't. I don't think they're tanking. They had a mildly successful year last year, right? I don't think they decided like we need to suck next year.
Yeah, so they do. They think they're onto something with R.J. Barrett and that cast of characters.
Scotty Barnes, Grady Dick.
I mean, Barnes is a good player. Like, you can't deny Barnes being a good player and a player that you can build a team around. I mean, I obviously haven't done a good job of that yet. But if I really thought they were tanking, and it's still early to tell this, but I don't like putting tanking teams on there unless they're also bad at tanking.
Because the Brooklyn Nets need to tank, and those dudes are playing hard right now. Like, they got 4 wins already. You know what I mean? Like, that's crazy that Brooklyn.
The Sixers don't want to tank, but they're just horrible too.
Yeah, they're bad. But that's, you know what? The NBA season is long, Jimmy. That's long. That's the other thing that I'll say. Milwaukee's old, but like what I do right now, like, give me all your Milwaukee stock. All right, give me all your Milwaukee stock because the NBA season is long. We talked about the Mavericks, right? We talked like this podcast has been about, are we panicking on anybody? And I want to close with saying we shouldn't panic on anybody because the Mavericks were not looking anything last year. They were listless. Oh, all of a sudden there's a trade at the deadline. We got PJ Washington. We got Daniel Gafford. These two guys inject the lineup into the Mavs and boom, they're all the way into the playoffs. You know what I mean? So like, the NBA season is long. Give me all the Bucks stock. Doc Rivers might not be a great playoff coach, but he's an experienced NBA coach. I think they're probably going to turn this thing around. Middleton won't be back for long, but he will be back at some point. That'll provide a boost. Like, Milwaukee's not over and buried. No one's over and buried in the NBA unless they want to be, right, Chris? Unless they want to tank. What you're saying so far, nobody is.
Yeah, no. I mean, look, even Charlotte has 4 wins, all right? So, like, teams are out there trying right now, and that's what you want as a fan. You want your local team or the team that you're a fan of to be trying. That's what we want to see.
And with that, you've been listening to the Fast Break on the More You Know Podcasting Network. We're going to be right back with the Yeah We Know Podcast. Welcome to the Yeah We Know Podcast, part of the More You Know's Podcast Network. You're with Jimmy, Chris, and Rod. Chris, I need an old man take from an old man. Do you know anyone?
I'm going to tell you about somebody who has a deadbeat of an old man, all right? I'm going to talk about the new face and hero of the WWE, and I'm talking about the one and only Dominic Mysterio, all right? We know about his deadbeat dad, but I'm telling you, this is the new WWE. This is the new era. This is what we've been needing, and this is the genius that is going to take us there.
So you think...
Wait a minute. He said he was going to tell us about Dominic Mysterio, but then he didn't really tell us anything about Dominic Mysterio.
So Chris, my follow-up question would be, do you think Dominic Mysterio is the face of WWE going forward? WWE 2K26, he will be the face on the video game.
Yeah, he should be the face of it now if they didn't update it already. Listen, here's a kid that made our heat list 2 years ago, right? And what has he done? He has continued to grow that heat. He is one of...
Dude, you think our heat list was the Magna Carta with as often as Chris references that thing?
It kind of is, though. It is the greatest thing we have going here.
Yeah, we are on the pulse of the WWE Nation with that heat list, all right? And we saw it 2 years ago. We thought it was a gimmick 2 years ago. We didn't think that was going to last 2 years ago, did we? Did
He wore
anybody?
a hood in the ring to wrestle. It wasn't very smart.
And here we are. The kid is a genius, Jimmy. All right. I am a full believer, 100% behind anything he does. Let's go.
Jimmy's a genius. Did you hear Chris say that he's a genius? Did you happen to catch that Chris mentioned Dominic Mysterio was a genius?
When I think of Dominic Mysterio, I think of genius. That's what I think of. Listen, he's done a terrific job, Chris.
He made sure
job with his character.
He made sure to get repetition there. Genius was mentioned 3 to 4 times at least to make sure everybody understands that Dominic Mysterio is a genius.
And I got you guys to do it another 5 or 6 times, so now it's in the lexicon. It has reached the zeitgeist. It is now fact.
Quit using those big words on me. You know what is genius, though? Having a United States Women's Championship that was unveiled on the November 8th SmackDown. Very, very exciting news, and that is something that we have been advocating for some time, Rod.
Definitely, man. I think that's great. I think Chris always loves a tournament. I think we're absolutely getting a tournament for this belt. I think it is also great that we just decided to call it the Women's U.S. Championship. So that completely leaves open the possibility that we can also move to the Women's Intercontinental Champion at some point, right? It makes this belt seem more important, that it is a belt that already exists in just the women's side and not some other weird name that they came up with it to be, you know what I mean? So the Warrior belt or some weird deal like that, they didn't do that. So I'm all for it. And I say right now, the first ever women's U.S. champ needs to be Naomi. Put some glow on that U.S. championship belt for the women. Let's go.
Naomi hasn't done as much as one would think since she's come back. I think that's really a good pick there. I don't know. I think maybe like a Raquel Rodriguez could win the women's championship. Have double belts going on there. Really try to up that that stable until Rhea Ripley comes back. Hint, hint. It's closer than you think. Chris, you obviously don't think either Rod or I are correct. So you've been around a long time. Who's going to win the U.S. championship?
It's Tiffy time. All right. What better way to start a reign of a new belt than with a heel and a lackey of who's supposed to be one of the biggest female heels in the company, right? So I definitely see Tiffany using her money in the bank to get her hands on that belt.
Oh, so do a little Austin Theory gimmick that she goes for that instead of the title. Do I like that or not is the question. I see both ways. I really want her to go for that.
Because see, that way I will get my tournament and it won't mean anything because that's what seems to happen to me in the WWE.
Then you'll be able to get anger at it. Okay, I got. So we have like a 45-minute amazing match between Bayley and Naomi. They're going at it. Naomi 1, 2, 3 gets the win, and no, it's Tiffy time. Yeah, I like it, Rod.
So are we going to start this tournament up and then we're going to have the championship match be in Toronto at War Games? Is that what we're
I would think that that's what they would do. Yeah, I 100% would think. Unless they do 2 matches at War Games and the final is at War, is right. But so they'll do the War Games match women's, have 2 qualifying matches, have a couple other matches, final, then the War Games men. Maybe. I don't something like that.
That's a lot of women's
like
matches,
just a single
though.
match.
They don't usually give women that many matches at the PLEs, unfortunately.
That'd be a lot. That'd be like 6 matches, and that's a lot of women. That then you have at least 8 women because I think it's 8 for the women. I'm not sure if it's 10 or 8. I can't remember.
I don't remember.
It's 10 for the guys.
Nikki Boy said.
But then that's 8 women, strong women that are not going to be involved.
Which is fine, and that's the other reason why I think it's going to be difficult for Raquel Rodriguez, right? Because I mean, we don't have the women's War Games set up yet, do we? I guess it's Bianca and them, right?
Kind of, yeah. Against the, yeah.
So who knows? But I tend to think like Jimmy, your thought process about Naomi. We need to give Naomi a bit of a hey, you've come back. She still gets a bit of a pop from the crowd. You know what I mean? She's a baby face. Like I got to disagree with my guy Chris here. I don't think you put the belt on a heel to start here. I think in the men's division I might do that, but I think in the women's division I don't think we go there. I think we put it on a baby face to start.
Okay. Let's go to the men's war games where we have the Bloodline, which the Bloodline is back, gentlemen. They are ready to go. We have the new Bloodline, 4-on-4 to settle the score. Oh, wait a minute. There's going to be 5-on-5. And we know it's definitely not going to be Seth Rollins. Not going to be on the team. Rod, talk to me about how Seth Rollins is going to be on the team.
I think it's definitely going to be Seth Rollins, but I wonder who's the fifth for the new bloodline, right? That is what has me intrigued because I think you're absolutely right. We tease Seth, we'll play a dance, and then he's going to end up being the guy. What is the fifth for the bloodline going to be? Drew? Are we going to run back Chris's guy who's wrestled with the bloodline before? Is Phil going to show up? Because we just heard rumors that maybe he is coming back for War Games. So is Phil going to just completely turn to the dark side and join up with the bloodline as the fifth guy? I don't know. I'm more intrigued by that because I agree with you, Jimmy. I think Seth Rollins is definitely the fifth with Sammy and the Usos.
Chris, you know exactly who the fifth guy is going to be. Come on. Come on, Chris. You know who it's going to be.
The fifth guy of the new bloodline is none other than Sami Zayn.
Goodbye. And with that, you've been listening to the I We Know podcast part of it. Okay, so you think Sami Zayn is going to, in the match itself, I'm assuming, we're not going to know who the fifth guy is, and then all of a sudden it'll be Sami Zayn coming down, or Sami Zayn in the ring and just turn? Or is it before?
I have been told by you guys many times that the WWE, they're allowed to do anything they want.
Yeah.
So, that being said, here's the thing, though. These last couple weeks, I have been routine, essentially, to see Sammy join up with Solo because that, to me, is interesting, unexpected, something that's going to keep me at the edge of my seat. Otherwise, I'm not there on this story.
You're not there on the new bloodline versus the old bloodline. Man, you are consistent. You are so freaking consistent. First of all, the fifth guy is going to be Bronson Reed. That's who it's going to be. Bronson Reed will be the fifth guy. I don't like that at all. I know. I think Bubba Ray Dudley said this on his show today, but the only thing that doesn't make sense is the bloodline recruiting Cody Rhodes to be on their team as a fifth, and then we don't find out who the fifth on the Bloodline 2.0 is until night of War Games, and that fifth guy is The Rock, and that's what happens there to start everything moving forward. But Rod, it's gonna be Seth and Bronson Reed.
Yeah, it probably is. The Rock is interesting, man. And then Jimmy, you seem to be all over the Peacemaker shooting schedule. Do we know what's happening with Cena? Is he going to be able to make his way up to Toronto? Because I continue to think that my guy, who I always got his towel up here for those that do the video of the podcast, Never Give Up. I tend to think my guy's going to be involved somehow. And let's not forget that his most involvement currently is he still owes one to Solo Sikoa, because I don't think just the one move that he dropped on him in the big close to WrestleMania last year was quite enough. I think Cena still owes Solo something, so I tend to think we could see old John Cena here and his pop as well.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think that Cena got destroyed. Maybe he's looking for some revenge in there. Has he done a War Games? I don't think he has. I'm not sure. I need to look.
I don't necessarily mean that Cena's going to be one of the guys there, but I think we're going to see an appearance.
Go there.
There's history of him and Solo from that devastating last fight we saw of his.
Correct. Yeah. I can't remember. Do we do spoilers on this podcast or not? Because we have a spoiler that we need to chat about real quick. Do we do spoilers?
Well, I think it's fine if you got something good, because I heard that they're going to start taping some Raws ahead of the holidays.
So they taped Raw for this week, so everyone can spend the week with their family, which is really cool. That's awesome. Rhea Ripley returned and beat the hell out of Liv Morgan. So Rhea Ripley only gone for a little while, broken orbital bone. She's got the mask on, and I guarantee that mask is going to be awesome. We haven't seen it, but having Rhea back this quickly, I think, is really good for the women's division, Rod.
Yeah, it's not really good for my hope that was somehow going to lead to Charlotte Flair, that Rhea is back immediately. It also was not great for your guys' shout that Becky Lynch was going to be back. And I also thought maybe you guys were getting a little fodder for that take when Liv name checked her in her promo in the ring and reminded everybody that that's who she beat to get the belt. So But hey, I'm not going to be mad about Rhea coming back. Congratulations to her. Now, Orbital Bone, Mask, I don't know how much she's going to be able to be involved. And I tended to get mad at our guy Phil for being around, and I'm doing quotation marks here, but not actually fighting. So I'm kind of bummed out that we're mostly going to get that from Rhea, but at least it'll make for decent TV and we'll continue the story.
Chris King.
Yeah, I mean, she's the biggest draw in the women's side right now, right? By far. WWE needs her back in that ring, so it's a good
Of course.
thing.
We have 2 tag teams. The New Day. They're going to break up. They're going to break up on November 28th, their 10-year anniversary. I think that's very simple to go over. But I want to talk about the New Day. I want to talk about another team. I want to talk about DIY. I want to talk about DIY breaking up. They're going to break up, and they're going to break up soon. Ciampa has had it with Gargano. Had it. And I love every second of it because this, gentlemen, this is what you will get to see. You will get to see Tommaso Ciampa versus Johnny Gargano killing each other. You thought the best of 7 match was good? You don't know what even to expect now, boys.
The other thing I love is that we basically have we have the yin and the yang. Johnny Gargano is married to the poison pixie Candice LeRae, right? And so Candice LeRae was involved in a storyline where she was sick herself of being the good person and always doing what was right, and was like, we're going to turn and do whatever it takes. And then her husband, Johnny Gargano, is now going to be the one who's left behind because he is not willing to be that, right? And he's shaking hands with guys and trying to be the stand-up dude that we all love him to be. So I'm all for it. Gargano can wrestle. The Blackheart can wrestle. Let's go. I saw some of Ciampa's work in NXT. That dude was a complete badass. So I'm all for it. Let's go. DIY. They never got over as baby faces with the crowd. So let's get some better work out of them this way.
Chris, do you care at all, or am I clapping?
I really enjoyed Gargano reaching for the tag and Ciampa looking back and was just like, no boy, and then proceeded to put Pretty Deadly into the ground. It was so lovely to see. Anything Ciampa does from this point forward is a win in my book.
Listen, you didn't have to
Shots
mention
fired.
Pretty Deadly.
Yeah, I did.
I talked about
Yeah,
that
I
match
did.
without mentioning Pretty Deadly. We didn't have to do that to my guys.
Yeah, I did.
Boys. Come on.
And finally, after 30 years, Chris King was in his 40s when The Miz debuted. It looks like The Miz is going to change characters a little bit because he turned on the Wyatt Six and has joined the Final Testament. How excited are you for this, Rod?
Hey man, if we can get something out of the Miz that is a good run for him and makes an interesting storyline to add to his career, that's not just I'm the Miz and I'm awesome, which was a great gimmick and will go down as a gimmick that's going to get better credit than it ever actually got, that deserves better credit than it actually got. That's what I meant to say there about the Miz's overall WWE career. But here's the thing that I worry about though, Jim. We talk about this an awful lot, right? Like, if you're involved in a gimmick with AJ Styles, if you're involved in a gimmick with Chad Gable, if you're involved in a gimmick with the New Day, right? If you're involved in a gimmick with Karrion Kross, we're all excited and we want to know where it is, but we also know exactly where you're at on the pecking order. And I just continue to say that we did a lot of work making the Wyatt Six seem like something, right? They had a segment that probably had to cost more than a lot of segments they did on a live Raw, where they laid out the entire arena and had smoke through the place. And now they're messing with Karrion Kross, AOP, and the Miz, Jimmy. So I'm not putting it down. I'm just saying, like, if we're going to try to analytically look at the WWE programming here, and we got 2 hours and we only have so much that we can devote to storylines, and we did all of this for the Wyatt Six just to birth a mid-card semi-heel faction that randomly shows up. I don't know, Jim.
Unfortunately, I kind of agree with you here. It's weird. Unless this is the beginning, this could be the seeds being planted for the biggest angle in wrestling history. You just never know, except we kind of know, right, Chris?
I really loved Awesome Truth, and I wish they would have kept that alive. I has having so much fun with Awesome Truth.
And with that, you've been listening to the Yeah We Know podcast, part of the More You Knows podcast network. You're in the ring with Jimmy, Chris, and Rod.
I think we know what just happened there. Chris is mad that Paul Ellering went down with the mandible claw. Chris, under no circumstances, can support elder abuse. Paul Ellering is clearly the oldest man that appears on WWE television. He is mad, and that's why he refused to answer Jimmy's question about Karrion Kross and his crew. We see you, Chris.
Goodbye, Nick. Yeah.
Shout out to LA Knight working the t-shirt cannon.
I went too